There's video game tier lists, there's Oreo tier lists. I think it's time we create some world building tier lists. So today, we're going to be ranking a bunch of world building ideas and tropes from different dark fantasy media, because if you know anything about me, it's that I'm a dirty, rotten thief. So get out your pens and notebooks because we're going to be going over all of the fantastical locations, terrifying big bads, and bizarre factions that you should absolutely steal for your stories, D&D campaigns, or other world-building projects. But Stephanie, how do you rank a bloodthirsty villain against a demon-infested city? Easy. By having ADHD and an immaculate sense of vibes. Glad I could help. Let's begin. We're starting strong with something from my S tier right from the start. You may notice there's only one F tier spot, and that's because in general, I really like a lot of different things. But this first spot goes to the Sacrificial Lamb trope. This is where the heroes are sent to do something impossible, something against all odds. Maybe due to indifference by the person giving orders, maybe even hopes that the heroes actually die. But either way, the heroes are very, very expendable in this trope. I love stories about stacked odds. I love a good underdog story. They never get old to me. Like, I barely watch sports, and I always cry whenever I watch underdog documentaries. So this one goes into S tier. Next we have the gods. They're just like us. For this little bit of world building, this is about the path to godhood being obtainable through some means by mere mortals. If you're playing in this genre, it has to be kind of like a dark, messed up way though. A good example of this is Marika in Elden Ring, and I really love this idea of the two fingers, of them being the ones to select candidates for godhood, but I think this is a story that usually ends up being reserved for more Greek, Roman mythology types of themes and campaigns, and I think it's time to take it to other genres. A tier. Close behind this one though is the gods. They're not like us. And honestly, these ones are probably pretty interchangeable. I almost gave them both A tier because I really love the concept of gods being so distant from humanity as well. I always think that's really, really a cool concept to play with. And so I'm just coming at this from the perspective of a DM. So this one's a little less versatile than the pathway to godhood for players is kind of an element to bring into games. So this one's probably better suited to writing. And this one's about gods as sort of mutated, otherworldly, unknowable, monstrous beings. More of a primordials on steroids interpretation of godhood. Any sorts of Souls-like game is rarely lacking for these, but I think you can also get a taste of this idea with Creatures of the Abyss from Claymore. Like Rifle of the West is one that comes to mind for me. And that's where something looks humanoid, but definitely doesn't act like it. And so this one's going to go into B tier. Next we have our Psychos for Hire. This one's a guilty pleasure for me. I think it's fun for characters to have to deal with someone who really loves to destroy, someone who's sadistic and messed up and possibly can't be reasoned with. I also like that this can turn on the people who are hiring them, so players have to watch out for who they get involved with on their end as well. And that's going into C tier. Walled cities. This one's always fun because no matter what, you know their walls aren't gonna matter. They're not going to protect them, and sometimes this can lead to some sort of big siege type scene, but other times it's more about being rats in a cage, and other times it's even about you not being the thing allowed in the city, so it becomes more about covert missions. So there's a lot of different ways to use this trope. And any which way you go with it, it's not terribly original, but it is a well-trod classic. C tier. They look just like us. I love this. As most of you know, I'm a horror girly, so anything that's masquerading as human it's terrifying. If it's something like Yoma and awakened beings that eat humans, you can do a lot of uncanny valley moments with it, especially if they're inhabiting someone that the characters know. B+ tier. Next we have monsters fighting monsters. Anything involving creature hunting is already so much fun as a reason for a group to be together, and it's twice as fun when they're not really regarded as human themselves. They're also regarded as monstrous, but they're still trying to protect people who fear or even loathe them. Definitely S tier. This is rife with opportunities for these characters to snap or to find different reasons to do what they do, or even to not do it anymore and turn on those that they were supposed to protect. After that, we have Your School is Fucked Up. Some people think their school is messed up because kids are running rampant. For others, it's a little more dark, like in The Witcher, where 30% of kids survive the training, or Claymores, where it's a bleak 20%. So if you make it through everything, congrats, I guess? Because life doesn't seem a whole lot better after this one's going into C tier. Another common dark fantasy trope is the natural disaster, where something big changed this once normal world. And this can be more of an oops, monsters everywhere, like the conjunction of spears in The Witcher. Spheres? Spheres, then spears. Or it could be something similar like elemental magic getting shifted out of whack. But it's something that causes a ripple effect of disastrous consequences. It's not super original, but it is a good way to kick off a story with a reason for why the world is so dramatically different than it once was. And I'm gonna put that in C tier. Okay, so this is one I really like. This idea of painted worlds from Dark Souls. Basically, it's what if paintings were little pocket dimensions. In this game, the painted world was originally created as a safe haven, as a peaceful place, but then ended up getting stocked with a bunch of uh-ohs and objects the gods feared. Is it undesirable? Into the painting it goes! Easy peasy. The painting has guardians, but at this point it's been so many generations that they don't really recall why they're guarding it, what the reason is. So I think this idea can just have so many different adventure hooks. Obviously characters can go into the painting, but I'm personally more interested in what happens in a world where things start seeping out of it. Like, I think this would make a really great mini campaign where a kingdom is under threat and is contending with weird monsters that just keep appearing. Maybe the characters have to figure out not only where these monsters are coming from, but how to fight them, how to maybe destroy the painting or stop this from continuing to happen. And in Dark Souls, there's this whole thing about this cycle of rot and fire and rebirth of this world. But the next painter is in the painting. They live inside this painting. So another potentially interesting adventure could involve saving this person if they want to continue using it as a portal, or maybe to create other portals for the players. Bunch of different things you can do with this little seed of an idea. A tier. Our next item. Power with a cost. Anything where a character has crazy power, but it's incredibly limited in some way because of the cost associated with it, that's what I'm talking about. So in The Witcher, magic never comes for free. In Claymore, using too much of your power runs the risk of turning you into a Yoma, into a monster, by using these really strong abilities. I think giving characters crazy powerful options that have giant downsides is really fun and awesome. Especially if it leads to something like a big self-sacrifice moment. A tier. A closely linked trope in these sort of stories is this idea of being corrupted by power. And honestly, I'm kind of meh on this one. Being power hungry is a tale as old as time. I think Kerrigan in Shadow and Bone is a prime example of this sort of situation. And it's not really that it's bad, it's just kind of expected. Something really wild has to happen at this point for me to really make it feel like I didn't see it coming. Into D it goes. We have shadow and or ambiguous organizations. Are they good or bad? We don't know. This is a particularly fun one to have if the characters start as members of one, having that be their hook into the world you're building. Claymore has a really good version of this with the organization. And the organization might not be amazing, but it protects ordinary people, right? Right? A tier. One that goes arm in arm with this is the call is coming from inside the house. This is one where the organization that you work for isn't quite as nice as it would like people to believe. Because once the characters find that out, is the organization going to try to eliminate them? Do your characters now have to stop them? I like this one because it's one of those tropes that highlights the theme of humans being the real monsters. And that's bleak, but in more of a reality check type of way. It's easy to say that something so visually other is the big bad evil thing, but sometimes you also gotta focus on your own house. B tier. Overly loyal. This can play out in a bunch of ways, but it's often pretty tragic. Sometimes this is a trope about a character that could be good, or at least better than they currently are, but maybe they feel like they owe it to someone who is not so good. And it's that entrenched allegiance to the wrong person. One of those ones that always comes to mind for me on this topic is Casca and Griffith from Berserk. This sort of trope almost always ends in betrayal by one person or the other, so it's a really great opportunity for characters to try to convince the overly loyal person to see the light despite their slim chances. B tier. Another common world-building trope that comes up a lot is this idea of amplifiers, and I really love quests about acquiring things that are going to amplify a character's power. You know, you can use runes, you can use shards, spells, or in the case of Shadow and Bone, bits of ancient magical creatures. And I think this is the media that has my favorite imagery of this, since you have to fuse yourself with bits of the animal. You can see that the antlers are spliced into the main character's collarbones. I think it's a very metal look. Wish it were me. But I also love in this show that certain people can use other people as amplifiers. This is good, solid fun, C+ tier. If we were just talking Shadow and Bone's concept of amplifiers, it might have even moved to B tier, but alas, C+. Our next one is, help me, Psyche. The kids should bring that one back. This is when the person who hired you or asked for your help, or was even the victim, turns out to be the problem. Common little NPC side character trope in Dark Fantasy. And I do actually like it, but one time. It's not fun if it's a repeater. In books and TV shows and stuff like that, it makes the character look really stupid. And in TTRPGs, it's really annoying as a player not being able to trust anyone. So even though I do like it when it's used once in a blue moon, it's a good occasional shock. It's gonna have to be D tier for playability for me. If you're a writer, you can bump it to C. I'd really reserve this one for one-shots though if you are going to use it. Next up is the nature of the beast, aka, are the beasts actually beasts? I love this idea of corrupting forces that fundamentally change people. Like with the beasts of the abyss in Dark Souls, or how Claymore, when they unleash too much power, they become awakened ones. I think that finding something like that out, something like a type of monster you're trying to destroy has a human past, that puts a lot of things that are happening into this weird gray zone, where characters might try to find different ways to deal with things as opposed to just walking around slaughtering everyone. It just adds a little bit more moral implication to who or what can be saved. So this is going to be S tier purely for the look on players' faces when this happens in TTRPGs. Otherwise A tier. This one is a classic found family, a desperately needed trope to bring light to an otherwise very dark genre. I think it's great when it's side characters. I think it's great when it's your party, and I even think it's great and really cute when it's a found family of villains, like in Arcane. Not original, but solid. That goes into C tier. Ooh, is that Abomination Angelic? Maybe it's just malevolent. Maybe it's Maybelline. I've always enjoyed a depiction of angels as lawful, but not necessarily good. Especially when there's a pantheon of vastly different gods. Like in Diablo, there's this moment where the Angel Council almost votes to wipe out humanity. I think they're only one vote short, very dramatic. But yeah, that's good shit. Even better are things that are called angels, but aren't quite angels. You know, angels. Yeah, buddy. That's a monster. And it's S tier. Next up is hybrid weapons. I don't know why these are so common in Dark Fantasy. There's things like swords that morph into whips, like Ivy's sword and Soul Calibur. There's like sneaky shield spears, there's greatsword hammers, there's all sorts of weird hybrid weapon stuff. And personally, I love surprises. My enemies, not so much. B tier. How about some fancy nicknames? Teresa the Faint Smile, Phantom Miria, God Eyes Galatea, Ophelia, the Blood-Soaked Warrior. These are great when you're not quite sure why a character has that name yet, and they're even better if you let your D&D party or someone in it earn a cool nickname that people echo throughout the land. B tier. And so now we're down to our final 5. And for this little piece of world building, I want to highlight Dark Souls' approach to demon origins. I actually really like demons in general, and I don't feel like I get to use them enough in my games. I would like to remedy that. But when I do get to use them, I'm definitely going to riff on giving them a cooler origin story like in Dark Souls. So in that game, demons are oopsa babies. They came as the result of the Witch of Izalith. That's how you say it? They came as a result of this witch attempting to recreate this fading first flame. It went wrong, naturally, and she ended up creating the Flame of Chaos instead, which transformed her daughters, the priests, all the things around her into the first demons. Sick. It would make an awesome Abyss campaign if your players had to deal with your interpretation of the 7 Daughters of Chaos. A tier. And while we're on the topic of Dark Souls, another piece of world building I can't neglect is the Deep. Because here we have the Church of the Deep, a formerly holy church corrupted by cannibalistic worship. Naturally. And so it leads to it becoming this place of like stagnant, sludgy waters and putrid monsters. Really, really gross. But most importantly, you have Aldrich, Devourer of Gods, and his Deacons of the Deep. If you couldn't tell, Aldrich has developed a particular palate with this little cannibalistic sect he's started. Formerly a dude of normal faith, he started eating humans until he became this giant melted sludge monster. And since he got bored with that and had some visions, he decided to switch to eating gods instead. And there's like a lot more to this lore, but the whole eating gods thing is what I'm really stuck on. I think there's a lot of different settings where you're dealing with maybe 1 or 2 creepy archbishops to stop them from collecting gods for him, but then eventually needing to face a creature like Aldrich would be a really fun way to play with the concept of the Underdark in D&D. This one's gonna be a B tier. At our number 3 spot, we have child weapons. So this is Miata and Claymore, child soldiers like the main character Guts in Berserk, Miquella in Elden Ring-ish. And this was one I've always kind of been torn on. The part of this I really, really like is that moment of recognition that something unassuming either has powers far beyond your own or is more capable than you'd expect. That's always an extra nice touch in dark fantasy. But on the other side, the thing that's really unsatisfying to me about this is just how fucking bleak it is. There's something about this trope that just kind of bums me out. And at this point, I also feel like it's a little overdone in this genre. I do still think it can be used to great effect, though. I will give it that. But for me personally, this one's D tier. And so now we have our final 2. One S tier, one F. And this first one is what I call the Frollo Effect. If you're not familiar, he's the religious weirdo from The Hunchback of Notre Dame. And the reason I call this the Frollo Effect is because in a lot of dark fantasy media, there are some really, really perverse interpretations of goddesses' will. Lots of options. But I already mentioned the Church of the Deep in Dark Souls. And you run into this with the Church of Eternal Fire in The Witcher. And I think the most prime example of a dark fantasy Frollo Effect is the Bishop Mosgus and Berserk, flat-faced guy. And this is all about corrupt church leaders and armies of holier-than-thou people doing really messed up things, like setting people on fire or putting folks on a breaking wheel. And this is one that always drives me absolutely nuts. Villains like this always get me. They make me so angry. I hate them so much. It's just one of those things that anytime evil is masquerading as good and righteous and being over the top violent and being smug about it, something about it's maddening. And last but not least, we have a trope that I refer to as it's for the best. This is one about giving your children to weird shadow organizations or schools. And the one for this that always springs to mind for me is how Geralt's mom from The Witcher gives him to Vesemir, just goes and gives him to a Witcher school, even though 70% of kids die in training. And there's always these stories about parents selling their children to these weird organizations so they don't starve, they can't provide for them anymore, or giving them up under the threat of violence. Of course, that's not uncommon in this genre, but I just can't buy it. Like, obviously some people would be desperate enough or selfish enough, but would there really be enough of these people to form full children armies? Maybe I'm Delulu, but I feel like orphanages are pretty good options. And I'm not a parent, but if anyone tried to take my dog from me, let alone my child, you can bet I'd end up dead. That's the only way you're getting them from me, over my dead body. This is the one that takes the child weapon trope and makes it way too bleak even for Dark Fantasy for me. So this one's my F tier and the Frollo Effect is S tier. So, what about you? What dark fantasy media do you love? What world building tropes would you add to this list? Which ones did you agree with, disagree with, and what genre would you like me to try next? I tried to keep this one a little bit more general and just talk about the ideas I like, but if you want me to talk more about how I'd flesh them out in my campaigns, let me know. And if you're not sure on how to mix these types of ideas into your campaigns at home, make sure to check out my kit bashing video next, and then check out my campaign building 101 playlist. There's a lot of discussion there about how to turn these types of ideas into playable moments for the player characters. And as always, if you liked this video, make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Bye!